Hey everybody, it's Decap here, and in this video I will be going over the Q&A from the Thursday after patch 8.1.5 dropped. They did a Q&A the week after, which I kind of thought they would. And yeah, so a lot of people had commented this wasn't a very good Q&A, like worse than others or whatever. And there wasn't a ton of great questions, but there were probably five or six that had some really good information that I thought was useful. So I'll go through my notes here. As always, I do take notes on this to condense it down, and so yeah, so I will be like kind of reading off notes at some points, and also just I do leave some questions out that I just seemed were just really stupid, at least to me. So if you do want the full entirety, just go watch it. It's about an hour long. So the first question we're gonna talk about is 100% loot in the RNG loot in the game. Anywhere where you'd like there to be less RNG. So just talking about how the Mythic Plus catch, the Emissary catch, everything's kind of random. Personal loot, everything like that. So his point was pretty good on this, I thought. But there's more loot paths than ever before that are universally useful. Raid PvP, the weekly Warfront, Mythic Plus catch, Mythic Pluses in general. There's a lot of different ways to get useful loot. Um, they try to make it so you do not get the same thing for Mythic Plus every week. That was one thing he did say that he wanted it to be a little bit better. So, like, if you get three of the same thing 3 weeks in a row, or just like me, like if you just constantly get stuff you can't use, like it just sucks. So, if there's some way that they could, I don't know how they would necessarily, but just some way that they could fix that to make it more useful, especially for someone who isn't going to be running like a ton of Mythic Pluses just for fun or whatever. So they did say that they might work on that, and just in general. But in general, I like why I liked his first point was that I've commented this a lot. It's really easy to gear up alts these days. It's also like my alt can still be somewhat competitive with my main, even though it doesn't rate at all. So that is a pretty fair. It's a pretty fair positive to the negative of everything being in RNG. So next, gear resets are too frequent and too steep. Any changes on this? This has been asked before. So this is basically talking about when you go from one raid tier to another. The item level jump is pretty significant. This is just they found, I think it was during Warlords even, where a good benchmark was, and it's like 25 to 30 item levels that make the content hard enough towards you're not just running through it, but the gear you get also feels like an upgrade. So that's what the balance they're trying to seek is. The content's still hard or hard enough, at least for average players, especially, or average mythic players, or whatever. And then, but the item level and everything is still feels like a good upgrade for you. It's often said that fun is how you determine things. How do you measure enjoyment? Basically, he just talked about less burnout. So, like when you felt like you needed to grind your artifact power, that wasn't good in Legion, for an example. What they do is they look at participation levels to see what people are doing the most and when and why they might be doing it. An example he used was in Burn Crusade, a bunch of people were doing the Mechanar, but they were doing it to farm badges because it was so fast. In Legion, you had Maul of Souls and stuff that people were farming before they did a few changes to that. So they weren't necessarily doing it because it was fun. They were just doing it because it was, disproportionately rewarding. So, but however, if people are doing, if not that they are, but if people are doing islands, so you do your 4 heroic islands, get your weekly thing. If you're still doing like 4 or 5 more, and a bunch of people are doing 4 or 5 more after that, then they could say, well, maybe people find this fun, and that's how they would measure fun. Secondaries being better than main stats for some classes. Large eye level upgrades aren't upgrades because of the secondary stats. Is basically the point of this. This actually scales with the XPEC, which I didn't know. This is one of like the really useful questions. So I guess they've mentioned it before, but I never really took it into mind. So basically, when you first hit max level, the stuff has a disproportionate amount of like crit and haste and secondary stats on it, and that's because so you don't feel quite as weak when you first hit the level. And that's so initially for like every class, the crit and haste might be worth more because the items have so much on it, and it's like, well, I want all this crit, I want all this haste. But as the expansion goes on, it actually scales less than the strength or agility or intellect on the item. So let's say when you first sting, it has 100 strength and then like 30 crit, 30 haste, and so the crit haste just overpowers everything else or something like that. But then as it goes on, it has 500 strength and 60 crit and 60 haste. So the strength went by times 5, but the crit and haste only went by times 2. That's kind of the idea behind it. Not the exact numbers, of course, but just that kind of thing. However, he did say certain specs actually just have an issue, and they're working on changes to the item budget to kind of try to fix this. It's hard. Obviously, honestly, it's just mostly class tuning that needs done, but they tend to not err on that side of things. So they asked a question about the removal of portals. This was obviously going to be asked because apparently people were really pissed off about this. I missed this whole thing. I love the new portal room in Stormwind. You can still get pretty much everywhere just from different spots. They're adding a Caverns of Time portal back though, because if you want to get directly to Caverns of Time to run the instances, for example, it doesn't feel good to have to go to Oldham first or whatever and fly to Caverns of Time. If you're just trying to run an instance, I personally would say to get over it. Oldham's still pretty close, so but whatever. They are bringing back a Caverns of Time portal. They're going to add something in also to help navigation, and I think this is the biggest thing. This is good for newer returning players, but I think it's also good for all players because I think people just don't realize how to get to places anymore, and maybe it's because they didn't play every expansion, or maybe just because they didn't retain the knowledge or whatever. But you can get anywhere in the game pretty easily, and it's not that difficult to do, even after the removal of the portals. And I mean, like within depending on flying mount speed, of course, it's like I don't know, 10 minutes or something. Yeah, you can get anywhere pretty fast for how large the universe is. More Xmog, transmog customization. So hiding more item slots was the example given in this, and it's specifically hiding the chest slot for the Zandalari trolls because they have cool tattoos and stuff. And so you will actually be able to hide chests to show the tattoos. And that's for everybody, not just the trolls, of course. And I'm assuming the female characters will have a bra on or something like that. Not that I would care or anything. Whatever, more power to everybody. But I assume that just keeping with the game's traditions, you can hide your chest armor, but you'll still have like some sort of support for your breasts if you're a female character. So they're also looking to loosen old restrictions as well, which were like you couldn't use cookies meat tenderizer, for example. Like certain items weren't transmoggable, and certain things you weren't allowed to do certain things. They're going to try to loosen restrictions because people just like to transmog. Then to kind of bounce off that, increased character customization. People were asking like height, eye color, blah, blah, everything like that. Yes to the eye color. That's something they want to do as soon as possible. Like easy things like that, just changing colors of things. However, things like height, things are scaled based on things' height. So, like you would have to have it, like whatever the tallest thing is right now, that would have to be the max height you could be, because otherwise they would have to change like door sizes. Using an example in Molten Core, initially female Tauren couldn't get through a door because they were just too big. With Kulturian and Zandalari release, when will new info for the next set of allied races be? He didn't have any good answer for this, honestly. The only reason I included this question is just to say that there's no announcement or any upcoming allied races. So this is a good one. Leveling is faster, but abilities are still slow to gain. Like it doesn't feel good. So you ding level 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and then level 22 you get a new ability. It just doesn't feel good. This is something that I feel when I level up. So most levels in WoW feel bad. There's no abilities gained. 120 levels are too much, basically. Alt experience plus new player experience is just not good at all for that. Level squish had been mentioned before. This is something that was mentioned, like, I don't know, maybe even a year or more ago, and something I was really in favor of. And they're thinking about doing it. And the next question gets into what may have really, really thought about making them do it. A lot of players seem pretty open to it as well, which is good. So instead of being 120, we'd go down to like level 60, just randomly. Now, they wouldn't do it in the middle of an expansion. Obviously, it'd be at like the beginning of an expansion. They'd probably do some kind of storyline or something to try to do it, like your power level got shrunk or something. Or they'll do some back in time thing or something. But each level you would gain something in some way in this way. So if it went back down to 60, what they would do is you'd either get an ability or you'd get a rank up of an ability. The problem with doing that you could do the rank up of abilities all the way to 120. The problem is it had to be such incremental upgrades that it doesn't actually feel like anything. But if you had rank 1 Mortal Strike and then rank 2 Mortal Strike was much more powerful, but you got it like at level 30, then that would be pretty cool. You'd look forward to level 30 where you get a much stronger Mortal Strike. So even though it wasn't a new ability, it would be an upgrade, and it'd be something you look forward to. So that's something that I think would be a really good change and probably one of the highlights of this Q&A. Any older philosophies you are wanting to bring back while you're redeveloping Classic? So while they have resources going to developing Classic WoW, are you seeing any old things that you want to bring back? The level squish is one that they've kind of thought about, right? Because level 60, it's like, man, each level you get something out of it. The biggest one they focused on after that was community. The communities have been pretty much a failure in my opinion. It's just too hard to use. Like it's not simple to use in a way. Like I don't know. And maybe it's just me. Maybe some people have really enjoyed it, but I've run Mythic Plus with like a lot of good groups and we've all really gotten along and everything, but no one's ever like, "Hey, let's start a community" or whatever. I don't think people really do that in large parts. I mean, really social people might do that, but I think like just the average non-social gamer might not think that way to be like, "Hey, let's start a community and add other players to it." And not that we shouldn't. I mean, we should do it, but it almost should be like a little bit easier where you just like I don't know. Like maybe have everyone have their own have a starting set of communities, like a Mythic Plus community, BG community, like just and then you can like edit them if you want or add more to it. And then you can just like right click somebody and be like add to Mythic Plus community and then they can accept or decline the request. I think if that was the case it'd be a little bit for me I'd more think to do it. Oh, this is a really good group. I'm going to invite the tank, the healer, and this range DPS. I'll leave the one DPS out. He died a lot, and invite them to the group and see if they join. If not, that's fine, and you can do it the next time. But it's not like this like whole ordeal where you guys have to start a community or whatever. Because at some point somebody has to start the community, right? So that could be an issue. Then the last one I put in here, because towards the end there was a lot of bad questions. Thoughts on gold as currency in WoW, the cost of repairs, so like daily living, gold gain rates, and selling services for gold like Mythic Plus runs. Excuse me. So they do take in the baseline costs to casually play the game. So they make sure like casual players have enough gold to survive. So that's like the emissary quest, how they increase the gold that you get from like it's like 3 to 5,000 gold you get now from that. That's to make sure that you can do all your repairs, that you can fly to the different places that you need to do, and then still have a little bit left over. Not a lot, but it's almost like a minimum wage, right? That's kind of the idea of it. And then, other than that, the other thing I wanted to mention in that one is they talked about why they nerfed the gold missions on the mission board. I totally disagree with this. They were making it seem like it was hardcore players advantaging for this, but you could do it from your phone, so you didn't have to be a hardcore player to do the gold missions and stuff. So I just totally disagree with that, and I wish that they would bring back the gold missions to the lucrative levels that they were at before. But yeah, that's it for this Q&A. If you found it enjoyable, please subscribe. Q&A review, I should say. Please subscribe. That helps me a lot. And other than that, everybody have a good one.